You are listening to the Bring Joy Forward podcast. Conversations to explore, heal, and grow. You can find us on bringjoyforward.com and join us in our community group on Facebook. We now take you to the episode. Thank you for joining us. Hi, everybody. I am Shannon, resident artist and magic maker here at Bring Joy Forward. And I am joined once again with Marlisa McLaughlin. And we're going to do a little bit of a conversation on grief today. We're going to talk, so we like to say vibrant grieving. It was a phrase that Marlisa coined, and I just loved it so much. So we're going to talk about the exhaustion and the tiredness and the energy levels and all of that, and how it affects us as people who are walking with grief. And we'll talk about kind of a little bit of our experiences with that and ways that we manage it. Yeah, so Marlisa, do you want to start us off?
Hi, and thank you, Shannon. I love being here with you in these conversations because they're always so natural and organic. And I love the topic today because it's really what I learned in trying to write the book. And I remember for so long trying to find a title. Just a little background, folks. I am an energy worker. And so what that means is that I work in the human biofield, or the old word used to be aura, but I think your biofield is kind of more common now. So we have a physical body, and then we have this vibrational field out from our physical body. And there's a lot of stuff, our history, it sits in this field. Like our vibrational field will hold energy patterns, some of them and most of them long-standing if they're out in your history. And so having understood what I'm doing when I'm working with releasing trapped energy, as I was working with grief in particular, at first I thought there was a certain energy that grief held, but no emotion holds any special energy. Energy is just energy. So it gradually led me to come to understand that the reason I said vibrant is because that's the last thing we are when we're grieving. Unless we understand how to move the energy so that we are in the grief, but we're not being drained by it energetically, right? And I think historically and still today, it's very dominant and prominent in many cultures, especially Western cultures, probably more so than any. It's almost like perceiving loss goes with such heavy sorrow that one almost would feel guilty if you weren't anything but devastated and unable to function, because that's really what happens. It's like getting knocked right out, blindsided, and all of a sudden you're on your back and you're just going, what just happened? And some recovery periods are longer than others, but the initial coping with the actual loss as it happens, it's an anticipation that we're going to look that way. And then because there's no timeline for grief, and there's not even like a social structure to it, except the formalities of the rituals in different cultures. And for us here in the United States, it's a lot of funeral or a celebration of life services. It's almost like there's a certain mannerism that you feel you need to embody out in public. Now I'm talking about mainly when you're interacting out in public, and even at home, right? That you have to feel and express a certain way this loss. Well, guess what? You might be in such shock, you might not even actually believe that it really happened to you, right, Shannon? I mean, it might not
absolutely
for you, even through the few weeks of the formalities when people tend to come in whole, troves of people. You get surrounded and supported, and a lot of times by the least expected people, not always the ones that are always there for you, right?
Truth.
And so when you're placing yourself in this context, it's really hard to even imagine that you could have enough energy to brush your teeth in the morning or go through a day without being completely in a puddle on the floor. And so if you can learn how to get this energy circulating and moving, then even though the sorrow and suffering is that deep, the energy still can flow to create a level of resilience so that your physical body doesn't suffer and then turn into something chronic or even physically chronic. So
Yeah.
the first step into this conversation, I would like to brainstorm.
Yeah, and that's a lot right there, right? To unpack. So let's do that. Let's unpack a little bit of that. So you talked about the biofield a little bit. So a lot of you who may not have even heard these terms, you've probably heard the chakra system as a term. This is all the energy and how it moves through us. And then Marlisa mentioned a little bit too about how things get stuck. And so there's a lot of us that practice and work with and believe in the ways that energy gets stuck, not only in our lifetime but even in past lifetimes and as things come through. And so it's that you're kind of taking on the the patterns and the energy of things that have come before you, right? So if you're not working with it or aware of it, then you could be having systematic things happening to your body that are as a result of past traumas that are not even necessarily yours, right? So it's a pretty deep concept. So we're not going to talk, all about that, but that's where we're coming from. This awareness of how the energy sits and how it flows with us. And so you take that, and then you talked about the initial form of grief when it comes in and it comes at you and it lays you out, and maybe aren't even aware that this is happening. You're not acknowledging it. It's not real. You're just still doing it. I'm 5 years in. I still wake up and go, no, this is not my reality, right? It's the shock that takes over your body, and it is
Mhm.
you go to therapy afterwards, and the first thing they're talking about is PTSD, and that's because you're having traumatic responses to this horrible thing that has just happened. And we acknowledge it's a terrible thing, we acknowledge the pain for it. It's also the only thing really that's guaranteed, right? We're all going to come into this world and then leave it. So it's this known standard concept that's been happening for ages that is absolutely guaranteed to happen to us. And yet we don't talk about it. We don't share it. We go through it quickly. And as you said, we have all of these, I think, strange ways that we are not acknowledging it and working through it, right? So like you mentioned funerals and celebration of life and everything. Well, you said 2 weeks. I'm not even sure that it's a 2-week process anymore. I think, you know, you get what, 3 days off bereavement at work and things like that, right? And that's pretty much for everybody. Like in most cases, it's you got to pick it up and go back to work, right? Not everybody can. So, there's multiple stages of awareness that happen, and in every one of those, new levels of grief that you're unpacking. And I like to use I've heard it used, often, as the spoon analogy, where we talk about how we have as humans, we have a certain amount of spoons that we can utilize throughout the day to do all our things. I don't know why it's spoons. I need to come up with something more fun than spoons, but we have these little spoons to use throughout our day. Well, if you've got other things that you've got to add on to your burdens, so you have a disability or you're grieving or all these things, you have less spoons, right? So I don't remember what the numbers are, but say you start with 20 spoons. If you're in immense grief, you have like one. You have one spoon. And that spoon is just survival, right? So there's all this energy and tiredness, lack of energy that we have to manage as we're walking through and doing life. And every aspect of doing life requires different amounts of energy depending on who you're with, and are you inside or outside, and right? So yeah, so that's a whole lot to unpack. So let's try to use this time to really talk about some awareness on it, and then be solutions that we've utilized to, when we're aware of it, act on that and do what it is that we need in that moment.
Thanks. That was a good beginning of the unpacking. Because essentially that's, and we're all so different, and every loss is different for every person connected to the person who is lost or has passed on. So even the connecting people to the person who's passed, or the animal, or the experience, because it doesn't necessarily even have to be the loss of a loved one. I mean, the whole family could pack up and leave and go to a whole different country or a town and have to start over. So even all of those people connected to whatever the loss is, whether it's person, place, or thing, are all experiencing things even differently in their own internal systems. So, and that makes it even more complicated. And so there are those different levels where one person might be completely flat out, like, I can't function. Somebody might be hyper functioning. So then there's all this contrast. And I think all of us can relate to what it feels like when you don't have any energy and you see somebody hyper functioning. It really can put this, I know we're not supposed to be doing comparisons in our life, but I think it's natural to say, wow, or let's just put it this way. How about a 2-year-old versus when you've had a rough night or whatever, and it's the next day and you're just watching somebody 50 years younger than you zip across the floor. So just that, to put things into natural perspective, it makes you feel like you have even less energy when you're watching somebody have a lot more than what is even normal or natural for the situation at hand. I mean, that's more draining. Because then you're feeling, then you're bringing in the heavy hitters: guilt, self-expectation, a lot of disappointment in your own abilities, right? When you might be doing the very best you can, and yet you're feeling disappointed in yourself because you're not performing or responding and reacting in a way that makes it look like somebody else is handling it better, when it's just the way their system is processing things.
Expectations
are the worst. They are the worst for grieving people. Especially like, what, you're not over it yet? Hasn't it been? And sometimes it's ridiculously short periods of time that people, my sister literally had somebody say to her about her own father, like, come on, your father's been gone for a week now. Aren't you over it yet?
A week.
So
Yeah. The answer to that is you're never over it. And I like that you specified too that we're not just talking about people, right? Grief is a loss of something that you love. And that can happen in multiple ways, and it's also happening over and over and over and over again, because every time something happens that person, thing, place, whatever is not involved in that, you're grieving that loss again. And I think there's also, you talk about expectations. There's so much that happens, I think, that we feel, because we're all emotion, right? So we're feeling like I'm surviving this, and we see that other person who's over functioning, and doing seemingly well, right? Because we don't know what's going on underneath all that. So we see that, and then we have an emotional reaction to that, right? So it's this constant just turning over and over and over, like the tides just keep coming in and out of all these emotions. And so, for me, I want to talk a little bit about, like, the recognizing that you're doing those things can be a huge deal, right? Just stopping yourself as you start to go through that, because you're going to do all the things yourself anyway. You're going to go through, guilt and everything like that you mentioned. You're going to go through all of that. Don't add to it by then just bringing the societal stuff on it, and then also that comparison. So recognize that you're doing that. And I like to flip it. When I start to go down that road, I like to find something that just recently happened that I got through, and celebrate that small victory. And sometimes it's even, like I say, 5 years, I mean, Zach, it was 2018. Zach was 22. And, sometimes I can say that out loud and go right into the next word. And sometimes I need the breath, right? And we're talking 5 years. Well, that's never going to get to be an easier thing. And I don't think we really want that to be an easier thing. We just want to be able to have better tools and better coping mechanisms, right? So, but most of the time I'm going through the day and I'm doing the things that I do and doing life and everything else, and I'm okay, quote unquote okay. And then there are times when that alarm goes off in the morning and it's a struggle. It's a real struggle to get up and to get out of that bed and to go through and put the mask on, which takes effort, which produces an energy deficit because you're now putting that mask on and going out into the world, right? So that's a victory that I'm going to celebrate, that I did get up and I did go through the day and I did go through those things. But then on the flip side, sometimes I'll celebrate that I said, you know what? I'm not getting up today. I'm calling in a chip today and I'm going to just do what I need to do. And I think that's where the magic is really diving in and allowing yourself to have those moments, recognizing when you can. I'm a pretty hard worker and I, responsible, do all the things and everything else. But when I need that moment, I'm going to take it. And I think we have to allow ourselves to do that, to live in that. So it's celebrating, the small things that you're doing and then allowing yourself to do what it is that you actually need to do. And then the last thing I'll say before I flip it over to you is just that and we're going to keep talking about this probably every time, but that active step forward to walk towards joy. And it's the intention to put yourself in an opportunity for joy. You may not get there that day or that moment or that week or that month or that year, but if you continuously put yourself in to find those opportunities, I think that's where the magic is.
So just to kind of wrap up, because that was so much for
Yeah.
you folks at home, what I was hearing, to break it down in really simple terms, is awareness. Like, first, there has to be an awareness of what it is you're feeling. And most often, the feelings that are challenging for us, we become quicker aware of. Because when everything is light and we're just doing the things, we can get caught in the flow of the activity. And that can be a slippery slope, because sometimes we might have like a triggered reaction to something that doesn't even seem like it's connected to your grief, but that's the underlying thing, right? So then there's that whole dynamic around that as well. So having the awareness and then allowing your most authentic response just for you, to heck with everybody else. Like Shannon said, like, all right, do I want to get out of bed today, or do I want to get up and celebrate that I can move through this right now? Like, maybe I need to stay in bed, and that's nobody's business but your own. And the only thing I would sort of put behind your ear about this is that if it happens over and over again, you could be experiencing chronic grief. And then that can turn into, a real energy drain that causes a health deficiency. That's why I wanted to emphasize the vibrancy, with the life flow. So awareness, and then authenticity, and then take an actionable step, which might be take no action.
Yeah. Yes.
Who would have thunk? It's okay to do that. It's necessary. It's so necessary. And the best, most effective first actionable step is the breath, but not just a breath. You want to make it mindful. You want to say to yourself, okay, I need to really be in my present state right now. I'm aware that there's something that's not right, or I'm aware I'm grieving. What's the next thing? What am I going to do about it? Well, let's say I'm going to bring the breath in mindfully to let it cleanse. I personally really feel like visualization is the quickest way. And there are studies about that, where if you see an image versus getting a descriptive process through it, your energy is going to flow even faster. And I like the image of just taking the breath and having it come down like an internal shower. So it just washes everything right down the drain, right at the feet. So taking that breath in, knowing it's absorbing everything that's creating an energy drain and letting it go. And visually seeing those, put a color to it or a face to it or whatever, just anything that can help you really move that away. And then you might say, well, I didn't do anything. Well, it might not have, but at least you did it, and you might need to keep doing it and doing it. And it might not work that day, but it's the essential thing is at least you're feeding your system, right? At least the breath is full of electricity, and we're electrical. We're mostly salt water and electricity. We don't talk about ourselves like that, but the breath carries with it electricity. And that's why we light up. That's what our bodies do. They run electrically. So just bringing the breath in as a nourishment, even if it doesn't change your emotional climate, is still going to be beneficial for you.
Yeah, no, yes, that's all wonderful. I'm not even going to really add to that because I think I want to leave everybody just with that, let's all walk off this listening to this, and just take a moment and utilize that activity the next time you're feeling overwhelmed. Maybe it's consistent and you need to do it, but let that be a start. I would encourage you all to, if you're following us on whether you're on YouTube or Spotify and any of the places, go ahead and let us know too what you want to hear more about, because we're trying to keep these short, and I know we're already past 20 minutes right now. So that's just the general nature of us. I think when we get in there's so much information, and this is a constant thing, and this is why we work with it all the time. But if there's things that are hitting you and you want us to dive deeper into it, please let us know, because those are the things that we'll put a little extra attention to right off the bat and get to those quicker. But yeah, so the summation of it, you are doing amazing. You're doing amazing. And we're giving you that permission to do more of what you need, right? So just to have that awareness, of what you need, and just kind of step into it, and don't forget to breathe, and breathe with intention. Yeah. Thank you for being with us today. We appreciate you very much. You can catch us where you listen to all your podcasts and also on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook, both as a group and as a page at Bring Joy Forward. And you can also find everything that you need at bringjoyforward.com. And we appreciate you and hope that you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
You have been listening to the Bring Joy Forward podcast. Conversations to explore, heal, and grow. You can find us at bringjoyforward.com, and we'd love to have you join us in our community Facebook group. Thank you for listening.